Question. How do you pose your Gunpla? If you're asking me, the most precious one, the most complex and biggest build of them all that I did up until now is sitting right in front of me on the desk. So every time I work, do gaming or Gunpla stuff, I can look at it and it reminds me of a good time. But wouldn't it be nice to have something more fancy, like a custom built base? Something like this? In this video, I will show you how I did it. Let's check out the tools and the materials that we need for this neat little project. We need some pla plates, 1mm thickness, acrylic sheets, any kind of thickness works, styrofoam boards for the base, these cross-pattern aluminum sheets that serve as a grid. I got mine from an online DIY hobby crafting store, some polystyrene rods, leftover runners, LEDs, this is a flexible strip, some wires and soldering tools, battery compartments for 9-volt block batteries, a reed switch and a magnet. And of course, the heart of all of it, an Arduino Nano. Of course you can build this base without all the LED stuff and it would still look good. Before jumping heads-on into a project, I like to do at least some planning. In this case, I did a one-to-one sketch of the panel line design on a piece of paper. Choosing a pla plate sheet of 1mm turned out to be the right call, since it's quite easy to work with and won't add too much bulk to the base. Once I finished the design, it was time for scribing. I haven't done any scribing for a really long time. The Goof Custom was the last kit that I did scribing on, and that was November 2023, so almost a year. So I was a bit apprehensive. Needless to say, I did baby steps and was very careful. Meaning, whenever I would do the first line, it's almost with no pressure whatsoever. But honestly, it's like riding a bike. Once you acquired the skill, it won't leave you. So doing all the rest was quite fun. And I gotta say that a flat canvas like this is the perfect way to practice your scribing skills. I bet you've seen EA Gunpla's video on this. If not, check it out, I will link it in the description. That video somewhat served as an inspiration, to be honest. Doing the cutouts for the LED and the grill section was something new. The way I went about this was quite simple. Poke 2 holes into both ends and use a 0.15mm scriber to slowly carve an incision into the pla plate. Once I removed the incision part, I used a Tamiya flat file to sand down the edge in order to remove any residue. The entire piece took about 3 evenings to finish. Doing all that scribing definitely leaves a mess behind, so having a small vacuum cleaner is a lifesaver. All that was left is to sand the entire sheet of pla plate with a 1000 sandpaper grit. This way the paint will have an easier time to stick, and this is how the finished piece looks like. Next, let's add some structure to the base. I'm using these 4.8 by 4.8mm evergreen strips to create a frame. I like evergreen profiles because their polystyrene is easy to work with. Even for this 4.8mm thick strip, it's enough to cut a light guiding light and then just break it off and you will get a clean cut. Only thing I wish I had was a miter cutter to do angled cuts. Since we're dealing with an octagon here, I need to add a 45-degree bevel to each of the strips. A miter cutter would have made this task so much easier. Instead, I tried using the X-Acto knife and then some rough sanding paper to straight out the cut and get the job done. For the LED sections, I wanted to have milky glass to diffuse the light. So I took some clear acrylic sheets, cut them to size and sanded them with a fine sandpaper grid. The next part is quite interesting. I wanted to have a section on the base where you could see the interior of the construction, something like pipes. So I got this piece of grid. It's made out of aluminum and you can cut it with a pair of scissors. I think it adds a good amount of realism to the overall look. As for the interior, that one is simple. I prepared a sheet of styrofoam which will hold both the pipes and the LEDs, and for the pipes themselves I used a leftover runner and cut out the center of it. In order to know where all the parts would end up, I marked the spots with a pen and continued to assemble everything. A quick tidbit for you, I used PVA glue here. Using the plastic cement will melt the styrofoam. While the pipes are drying, let's tend to the outer frame of the base. For that, I glued 2 sheets of 1mm plow plate together, since 2mm sheets will be sturdier. Again, I needed to bevel the pieces so that they can all fit into the octagonal shape. I made it so that all the side pieces are push fit. If for whatever reason I need to remove it, I can still do so by taking off the entire frame. As a final step of the Scratch build, I added some H profiles to the sides for some visual interest. And there you go, that's the Scratch build done. Now we're entering fairly new territory. Electronics is something that I started just recently and there is still so much that I need to learn. So take everything I say with a huge grain of salt, or better, a whole salt shaker. Anyways, for this build I chose the flexible LED COB strip. This is 5 meters long and you can cut it to your desired length. In order to achieve the light that I had in mind, a light source with a high amount of LEDs was the way to go. I suppose LED filament or sticks would also work, but this 5 meter strip was the most cost-effective solution. One thing I worried about was that the LED straps might be positioned too far from the cutouts and lose brightness when I glue them to the styrofoam. So I ended up sticking them to 2mm styrene strips first to lift them up a bit on the styrofoam base. You know, with bits like these where you're trying out something new, everything you do is just winging stuff and hoping for the best. The way I go about this is to take baby steps and test everything after each step. Even though you see me progressing here quite confidently and smoothly, there was a lot of research that went into everything. To give you a short breakdown on how this whole Arduino thing works, let's look at my trial and error attempt. So please excuse the cable management, and most importantly, I'll say it again, this was achieved by trial and error and a lot of googling and rummaging through forums. So yeah, that's my noob disclaimer. So what is an Arduino? It's basically a microcontroller that can be fed with programmable code so that it manages digital and analog inputs and outputs. To make it more accessible, let's look at this simplified graphic real quick and address the most basic components of it. You have the board itself, which includes the microchip, then a USB port to connect to your computer, a way to hook it up to a power source, and both analog and digital inputs and outputs. The way I wired the LED system looks like this. And the code that I used looks like this. Since this was my first time trying it, I'm not too confident to give a proper walkthrough yet. And to be perfectly honest with you, this entire build was a spontaneous project, since someone on the Discord server suggested I try an Arduino after I showed some of the real great new work in progress photos. So expect a more detailed explanation of all the electronic stuff in the upcoming RG new video. Meaning, now is the perfect time to sub if you haven't yet, so you won't miss it when it comes out. With that wiring schematic in mind, I finished the rest of the electronics. Initially, I planned using Tamiya acrylics for this build. After all, it's gotten quite cold and rainy around here, so there's no way I can do airbrush action on the balcony. But since we humans fail to protect our beloved Mother Earth properly, global warming keeps on creeping up on us, and what can you say? There was a few days here in October where we got 20 degrees Celsius. So I took the chance and decided to go for Mr. Color lacquer paints after all, since I'm building a base where a master grade sized kit is supposed to stand on and where I will probably have a lot of material friction. Using the more sturdier lacquer paints would be the better choice because Tamiya acrylics are way more susceptible to scratches than lacquers. Plus, lacquers dry faster, so I was able to finish the paint job in one session. Funnily enough, I had a little scratch at one point, but a quick dab with a brush and the appropriate color managed to hide the little mishap, and the layer of gloss top coat at the end would hide the imperfection anyways. I ran out of hobbyist Q-tips and had to use regular ones, and boy, I totally forgot how garbage they are for cleaning up panel lines. So after I wiped away all of the rough spots, I took some toilet paper, dabbed that into the thinner and cleared away all the remaining residue. Turns out the toilet paper is really nice to work with, especially for larger flat surfaces. For decals, I used the sheet that I originally used for the master grade unicorn, if my cat lets me. But yeah, that is the last step before assembling everything. I don't know about you, but I still have to learn to find the sweet spot for decals and learn to know when to stop. Sometimes it feels like I can just go on and on forever. This time though, I was limited by the ones that I had left on the sheet and the fact that lots of them just don't really fit design-wise. I wish I had more decals that go into the construction type direction to make the base look more technical, but yeah, what are you gonna do? I sealed everything with a gloss top coat, and that is it. We're done. The moment of truth is drawing closer and closer. Will this project turn out the way I imagined? Or will this be just a glorified pile of plastic and paint? The way I'm fixing the electronics board to the rest of the base is kind of final, so if I had to disassemble everything, I would have to break off the polystyrene rods. Let's hope that it won't have to come to that. Last step was to add the magnets. With the unicorn, fortunately I can use this peg hole for the magnet. They both happen to have the same diameter. And with that, my friends, it's done. Let's check out the finished build. Pretty nice, right? And now watch what happens if I do this. Yo, it's working. Nice. Oh yes, lighting up like a charm. Okay, here is more beauty shots. And that is that, my friends. I hope you liked this build. I had a lot of fun with it and learned a lot, considering that this wasn't planned at all. But yeah, sometimes taking a detour will open new horizons, and all this knowledge can be very useful for future projects. So yeah, that is it. I will see you in the next video. Take care. No, wait, if you want to talk Gunpla in the meanwhile, join the Discord. Link is in the description.